And to see how we have to deal with those unresolved issues before we can go out and satisfy God, man, in a way that we think we could be used in that capacity, because it's going to be, it's just something, man, that has to be addressed, man, those unresolved issues, because everyone needs to, sort of like unpack. It
Mhm.
has to be, it has to be some unpacking that's taking place.
So you have been along with me through this journey, man. What year? What year? Oh,
Uh, it's
man,
2004,
man, in fact, we opened up a Facebook account together, right?
together. Exactly, exactly, exactly.
Yo, so
Yeah, you drug me into the deep.
I drug you in deep.
We are the church. Yes, sir.
Yeah, remember
But yeah.
we had a nice little flow going there, and we had a lot of good conversation. And you I consider you one of my favorite mentors.
Oh yeah.
You're much wiser than I. You're much younger than I, and I I have always
I take it.
held you at high esteem. And I wanted to just have a pop up conversation
Okay.
because you have been observing this process. I recall we were doing the discipleship in Virginia.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
It was going really well. We were really building foundation and making disciples. We were really excited. And then here comes this, well, man, this dude want me to pastor, man. What do you think about this? And you just looked at me. He was like,
Hey, I remember it like it was yesterday, right? Yeah.
and you know me, I start processing it. Then I start I said, wait a minute, hold up. And I just start taking
Proceed with caution. Yes, sir.
yeah, we've been through some church hurt together too. Wow.
Yes, sir. Yes,
And
sir.
man,
Yes, sir.
I wanted to talk with you just very briefly. I don't want to take up a lot of your time, but I want to get your perspective on what you've seen, your wisdom, how we can address men in this experience that many men are experiencing this in their families, in their homes. I want to just let you speak to the issues at hand. I know you had opportunity to hear about the rant. I know you understand what you've been watching from a distance of the things that have been happening. But I want people to really hear you. And if there are anyone that were willing to ask questions, we'll open it up for questions and some brief engagement. But I really want you to really share um, what you're seeing and how can we be encouraged and strengthened.
Well, I think that as me and you talked, this is a great time and a great opportunity for a lot of people,
Right.
because what I want to speak on two words: vulnerability and transparency.
Mm.
And you can interchange it, transparency and vulnerability. We have to understand that in order to become men and to become men that's fit for use, you have to become vulnerable and you must become transparent.
Mhm.
And this hiding and this thing that takes place within, ministries throughout this country, throughout the world, it seems like a lot, what I've experienced, that a lot of people come into the understanding of what church, come into the understanding of their personal salvation with the notion that they have the authority or the right to hide and to and disclose or become who they desire to become. It just don't work like that. It
Mhm.
just don't work like that, because what happens is, as you notice with a lot of people, they become highly, they are highly sensitive. Uh, they're they're susceptible to high levels of frustration and aggravation because of the things that they have experienced, they went through. What I'm talking about now is trying to unpack Teton. I liken it to, throughout our lives, we hoard these chests like treasure chests within ourselves. And what happens, things that we don't want to get out to expose, what we normally do, we put them in that chest and we try to lock them away. And so once one chest fill up, we get another one and we pack stuff away. We pack all these hurts, these harms, these traumas. We pack them away. And when we come and those things start weighing on us and we become heavy, so to speak, it's hard for us to move, hard for us to go about. We begin to look for help. And normally we turn to the church. And when we turn to the church, what happens is people at some point try to unpack, but there's that thing, that's the issue with trust that we run into. We run into trust and we don't know what really to let go, expose, or uncover. And what normally happens at that point, we make decisions. We make the decisions to leave things as is or leave those things away, and we create this new identity. It's not it's not necessarily the identity, your identity, but it is a identity. And normally it's things that those things in that chest we don't want to get out. And at some point we have to become vulnerable enough to allow some some system, something has to gain your trust enough to get those things and to deal with those things and pull those things out, man, to in order to free us. Because what those chests do, they 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 make it a struggle for us to be free flowing, to flow. You know, for the Lord to even use us, for things to flow through us, for us, our lives to be fluid and matter of fact. It just hinders us, man, and it weighs us down, and we struggle in life in general. And what happens is those things become so dominant and they become so heavy for us. We normally just decide to keep them, and normally what we do is we go about hurting other people with the very things that's locked away in us.
So this has been a very interesting journey. Background. I'm sitting here with my good friend Lee Truss. He is a professional in the environment of leadership. He has many degrees. He's been exposed to a lot of church experiences, and he's a person I know very personally and dearly. And I wanted to just have a short, brief conversation, and we're open for questions and dialogue. But I want to frame my dialogue, my convo around this here. It's very hard for someone to experience this level of letdown, right?
Uh,
You have people that have followed ministries, ministered,
wow.
been very supportive, whether they're in the ministry or from afar. And it's almost like anytime a leader falls or gets into a snare, it impacts everybody.
Everybody. Yeah.
And a lot of times people have sacrificed their families, they've sacrificed, their livelihood to be a part of a great movement. And when they find out things are not what they seem, we don't know what level of hurt or pain or frustration that one person or individual may experience. So can you take me through that level of acknowledgement? Because right now I'm seeing and we're experiencing people that are having some highs and lows, and they have depended upon man, though they thought they were depending upon God. We've lifted men up as idols, and they became gods unto ourselves, where we unplugged from God, right? And then we plugged into men, and we expected men to carry us through this daily life. And so when man falls, when he falls short, when he makes mistakes, either we're going to do one or two things. We're going to be angry, hurtful, we're going to reject him, or we're going to defend him. So let's have a conversation about this process of hurt and pain, leaving.
Tito, I don't mean to interrupt, but I think that's a tribute to the guilt, hurt, and shame I think you spoke of earlier. Those are great influences of people behavior, and that guilt, hurt, and shame normally it runs in many directions. Once we experience guilt, hurt, shame, and it's normally done through some form of abuse, some situations that have induced some forms of trauma, some type of trauma. And what happens, man, we start trying to really justify our own guilt, hurt, and shame. And we become bitter, we become angry, we become vindictive, we become, we become just savages, man. We go out to any and everything, and we're chasing fights, and we're running, man, with billy clubs and bats and jacks. And man, what we're trying to do, man, we're trying to hurt somebody. And so we the victims now want to satisfy ourselves through victimizing others. And we don't have the luxury of doing that. So we have to really deal with the guilt, hurt, and the shame. We have to become transparent. I mean, we have to, and I applaud what you're doing here, man, creating a platform for people to really unpack that and really deal with it in a sensible manner, that not going to be so judgmental and so abusive to the fact that you're going to jump down their throat as soon as they say something wrong. But what we really have to do is respect the fact that people have a right to hurt, but we do not have the right to hurt others. And what happens is people they haven't gotten that memo. They haven't gotten that memo. And what happens is you can help by allowing people to become overcomers by testifying to the fact that, hey, I'm hurt. Hey, I feel guilty. I am ashamed. And having a dialogue that, the need to move forward. And I think that, and a lot of times when people are hurt and they're guilty and they're ashamed, they run and they link up with the same person. It's like when it's like a fad or a crave. It's like it's like you're running after the same thing that got you in this position, that created the guilt, that created the hurt, that created the shame, because you're looking to satisfy yourself with pain. I often say that most people, if they hadn't unpacked and found that place and become vulnerable, and they're not transparent, what they end up doing is falling in love with the pain. What is pain they call love. And what is love they call hate. And what happens, because they have really decided somewhere within themselves that pain is something that's normal, acceptable, and they're committed to living with it. So they fall in love with the pain. So we want to unpack those things, man. I think what you're offering is a platform that allows them to come up, talk about it, deal with it in a way that's transparent. That only way you deal with shame is to face it. You can't change anything you're not willing to face. The only way you deal with hurt is to face it. And what we have to do, we have to understand that this is the only authorized way of dealing with it. Wow. So that's what I wanted to say, man. It's just the guilt, hurt, and shame, man. They are great motivators, man. And if we're not careful, we replicate those behaviors, man.
So talk to me about something here. So we know that
something happened to my volume, bro.
Something happened to your volume? You said you hear me? We in the house, right? All right. I hear you, Lee. You hear me?
Something happened to my volume. I can't hear you.
I hear you.
Oh, you hear me?
You got them Bluetooths in your head? All right, we good to go?
Go ahead, T.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think
you're just low. I'll deal with it.
All right, you hear me now?
It's low. It's all right. We used to this. Come on. We're gonna hear.
So why was it important for the men of the church when they were patiently waiting? Sometimes we looking at some of these things and we automatically assume that these men, they're stupid, they're dumb, they don't know no better. But there was a video that these brothers, Brother Billy Davis, and a couple of brothers, Anthony, and some brothers I've known, Tim Lewis. And the video was so inspiring to me because I saw men who were consecrated, who were patient, who were speaking with wisdom and grace and honesty. And to sit there and watch these men help the existing members and those members that already left, giving them perspective and helping them navigate through their experience. How do we continue to encourage these brothers that have taken this course of action? Because it's really time to shift people into a healing process. And I don't know if you've seen the video, but brother, I was really encouraged and inspired by these gentlemen. And it just shows that there are men and women who continue to learn and grow, but will also come into true understanding and knowledge of what needs to be done versus continuing worrying about the problem, but establishing solutions.
Well, I didn't actually see the video, but I could tell you this: if those brothers satisfied, the things that if they satisfied anyone, I just think that we should just encourage those brothers. Mm-hmm. We should encourage those brothers. We should show our support with a hand clap, a gesture, amen, or something to let them brothers know that what they did was effective and important, and for good use. And I think that a lot of times that's one of those things. If those brothers, just imagine those brothers beginning to be attacked, not just attacked. From what I'm hearing, they've already got hurt. They have already been through challenges in ministry. Now imagine getting attacked again. What is the conclusion that they would normally be drawn to? This is just becoming the identity of men. Men just want to attack. We want to hurt. We want to bash. We want to be insensitive to others' feelings. And normally what we do, we end up losing those brothers to some forms of, questionable behaviors. They turn to those things that satisfy a part of them that wasn't satisfied by, the efforts of other brothers or other men. And then normally this is what happens when men choose to give up on things, relationship, give up on God, give up on the right way, give up on marriage. What happens? They become discontent. They become discontent from the attacks. They become discontent from being basically at every turn met with some questions, some pushback. We have to really, as leaders, as people that care about mankind, we have to protect those brothers. We have to come to the aid and the defense of those brothers. A lot of times people say, when is the right time to contend? Anytime someone is being hurt for reasons that is not necessarily the right reasons, or not necessarily are called for by them, we should protect those. God is going to judge us, and especially those that consider themselves the leaders, by what they do in the forms of protecting people, not hurting people. It seems like today you get more credibility and accolades from hurting people than you do from protecting people. Wow. Now that is something that we probably going to have to face, man. We're going to have to face, our own judgments. We're going to have to face what we are accepting. We're going to have to face those things, man, and take it from a brother who me, T-Ton, I go in and everywhere, and there's people, man, that been hurt so much, man, they have given up on getting help for themselves. They're defeated, man. They're beat down. And guess what? If you continue to have brothers try to do the right thing and allow them to get beat down at every turn, those are going to be some of the same brothers that is going to reject any help, anything that is coming their way. Go ahead, bro. I can barely hear you, but I'm gonna try, man. Getting old, man. I can't hear you.
Turn that old Android phone up. I hear you. You hear me now? Do you hear me?
You should have told me. I got it resting on an Apple. Go ahead.
You hear me now? You hear me now?
It's low, man. I don't even want to mess with it because I don't want to mess your flow up. So I'm gonna bear with it. I'm gonna try to struggle with it. Got me sweating trying to hear.
So I got a question for you, brother. You had an opportunity here. You've been pastoring, or you've been in a space where you've led people as a leader. And when something like this breaks and happens, what would be the biblical way from a pastoral standpoint, knowing whether you're guilty or not, how would have handled this as a leader?
Are you what are we
I'm talking about what we're talking about now. If there was an accusation made against you, Brother Lee, how would you deal with this as a leader when in this world of social media, internet, so forth and so on? What would have been the right way to deal with this?
The right way to do it, it's what the Bible says. You go to the brother and you try to square it away. If that don't work, you take a brother. If that don't work and you have no other choice but to bring your innocence before the people. And what happens, personally, T-Tom, me, I work behind the scene. Can we talk about, okay, for years, and you're talking about since this broke, you're looking at a person who, in defense of what you have done, what you did, what I understand that the conversation we had where you was in protection of a ministry that you were a part of, you was in protection of individuals that you worked beside. And I can attest to that because we're close enough to know that even though I would have heard some of the things in the genesis of it, they would have understood what that meant. And we reached out, and I personally reached out to try to mediate the situation, try to get ahead of it. There was there was phone calls, there was emails that went unaddressed, to the point of my own personal frustration, because as a leader, it's very disappointing to have other leaders who just totally ignore, the attempts to reconcile and the attempts of reconciliation. And I know for a fact, and I understood what that costs you, what that costs your family, what that costs, you as a man, as a person, as a father. And I really was looking to really address the issue in the right way, as the Bible, as the scripture has said. And I was very disappointed that never happened. I never made any comments about it. I mean, we talked about some things. I was willing to, if need be, go to Dallas, go to Mexico, go to California, whatever it took, to rectify two brothers that I thought that no matter what another brother did, no matter what the accusation was, I felt that when you offend or hurt someone without just cause, there should be some type of reconciliation. And that's problem number one. That's numero uno. As far as the accusations, I don't know for certain. I know you would definitely know more than me, because I'm not privy to the information. All I'm speaking to as a leader, how other leaders should handle, leadership and friendships and relationships. And so therefore, it's very disappointing to me, because you see this happening all the time. And good leaders have to sit back and watch this unfold. To be honest with this went entirely too far. Too many people are hurt, and now I'm watching. I'm watching from a distance that brothers are coming in, and brothers are continuing the onslaught and not having any consideration for those people that have been truly hurt. Not that is very irresponsible, because as if you're going to do that, you got to take responsibility of what happens, in the end, or at the end game. If someone cannot take it, they are hurt, or something happened to someone, just because we're not cognizant of what we're saying or how we're approaching or what we're doing, that is very dangerous. And as I told you from the start, once it took me one time to see something, I said, proceed with caution. Anytime, because it wasn't for the people that's doing it, it's for those that's listening. It's the listening audience. And you have to, as a leader, protect those. And your presentation should always be in respect of protecting someone else, causing them not to stumble, causing them not to hurt. As Paul said, not applying their blood to your hand. You're just not going to be innocent because they create an act, or they commit an act, or they do something to harm themselves, or cause their family to be in such a way that causes severe distress. You're not going to be innocent of that. That blood is applied to our hands, and therefore, when you ask me to come on, that's one reason I said I'm willing to do it. This is not my stilo, so to speak. But hey, we have to do something. All I'm saying, we have to address something, because people are hurt, people are wounded. There's things going on that we have to address. And I'm glad like I said, you have this forum, and people should speak up. They should speak up on the hurt. They shouldn't carry around the shame. They shouldn't carry around the guilt. They should, we here, we're on this forum, but we also off the forum. We work best behind the scenes, so there's no problem. But we have to move to reconciliation. We got to move to healing. We have to move to the place that God would want us to move to, because we don't want this to hurt, these people, children, and they children. We need to nip this, in the bud. We have to deal with this right now, because it's going just a little bit too far.
I appreciate that feedback. And I think it's most appropriate to, make it clear that a lot of this we may have, or many have made some missteps, to include myself. I take responsibility for some things that I should have or should not have done. But most importantly, I know that the intention of everyone that has been participating to some capacity was to do a good work. But even in doing a good work, we often can make our good evil spoken of. And so this is why it's important to reset. This is really why it's important to reset, get focused, because the first truth is, do I have all this time? And why am I wasting? The truth is, I'm putting a lot of time and effort into something. I'm sacrificing time for something that must produce results, but the results must be produced not by my will, but by the will of God. Does that make sense?
Right. That makes sense.
And so I want to be able to encourage, the brother Seikos, the brother Billies, and the Bobbies, and everyone that's somewhat in peripheral of all this, that being able to make sure the main thing stays the main thing. And this is encouraging, because at the end of the day, brother, I don't want no more blood on my hands. I don't want any of this blood on my hands. You understand what I'm saying? I was in conversation with a few people who have had some very traumatic experiences, and they're hurting, and they're bleeding, and they're bleeding, and they're bleeding. And so it was pressed upon our conversation that you and I had, and many others, is to shift. It's time to shift. Let's shift, because at the end of the day, I can't do all three things. I can't plant, I can't water, and I definitely can't do the increase. I know it's a digital age that we live in, but I think it takes a body of people that are led by God. And I appreciate, as I stated earlier in the previous conversation on the top end, the efforts of Brother Seiko and Brother Tim and other brothers who initiated this conversation. But I'm really excited about the end game.
Yeah, and that's what we have to put our focus, because, like you said, you don't want to waste time. I mean, like, we need to focus on solutions. We need to focus on those things. We need to strengthen that which remains. And it's time to strengthen that which remains. You have this, we're still here tonight. I'm still up for reconciliation. I'm still here to mediate. And if there's someone to get a word to mediate, I know it may be frustrating for others for me to have the patience I do, but I just believe that, God is the author of forgiveness, man. He authors forgiveness, repentance, those things that comes along with his spirit, what he represents. And what happens is, man, people have been hurt. We don't want to be insensitive to those that have been hurt. If they've been hurt, we don't want to be insensitive to those that, feel like they have been spiritually abused, because the abuse, that resides within themselves. They have the right to choose and to believe if they have been abused or not. And we want to respect that. And what we want to do, though, we want to look for solutions. When things happen, we was talking earlier in the week when we was talking about, trauma, people going through so much trauma. I deal with it on a daily basis. You find people going through trauma. I done had people, man, that have been victimized by their entire family, that have forgiven them and reconciled and moved on and freed themselves. And I see the fruits and the product of that. That's that, and I see that all the time. So what has to happen? We have to encourage those that have been hurt, and we have to encourage those that's doing the hurting to come, and let's find solutions. Let's get to the solution. Let's get to the solution. And we got so much going on out here, man. We got so much work to do. Why not reconcile? Reconcile. We don't have a choice in the matter. We're commanded to do it. So why not reconcile? We got people, man, at this day into 2022,000 seem like what the year is. And we still got them mad at brothers and sisters and mamas and daddies. And, you know, they forget to be thankful for them. They forget that they're here. And they're still, you know, you go to someone, they don't have a mom, dad, grandparents, sisters, brothers. And then you have them and you're still holding on to hurt. You're still holding on to the past, trauma, harm. But we have to get to reconciliation. And now I just want to know, you know, you said you was going to open up the question. Just ask some of the audience, what do they think? How do we get to reconciliation? What are some of the things that they would like to see us as leaders do? Let us address that. What would they like to see us do as leaders, as someone that's, you know, that's pleading with them to seek resolution? What would they like for us to do? What can we do? I don't think we ask that question enough of leaders. What can leaders do to become part of the solution instead of just putting it on the shoulders of those that's been harmed and hurt and, you know, and victimized? What can we do?
Yeah, and I think that's a very important question to be asking of those individuals that's here. I'd like to welcome you while you're just tuning in, and thank you, Ms. Payton, Shonda Cates, Ms. Johnson, Ariel, of course, Mr. Billy Davis, and Bobby Carter, Mr. Brandon Lloyd. I want to thank you all, of course, for coming in and sitting in this dialogue, Mr. Curtis Overton. This is definitely a conversation that is necessary. And although we have had a technical shift, I think there should be some dialogue. And I want to get everybody's perspective on what we're talking about. Give me some feedback. And what are you really thinking? What do you want to see leaders do to be a part of the solution? What do you want to see?
I didn't hear you, T. My volume is shot.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. We got Miss Pham Jones says forgiveness leads to reconciliation within and flows to the outside. How important is
it one more time? How important is? Oh, it's most important. It's most important. And in order to get to forgiveness, we gotta, like I said, face it. There's things that we have to, you know, face. They got to be. We have to plot out a plan or a POA for the pathways to that forgiveness. Some are more difficult than others, but we have to first of all face what it is that we're wanting to be forgiven for, or we need forgiveness for. So we have to plot out a pathway to forgiveness and reconciliation.
Okay, we got Miss Tamla Henry. Tamla Henry says all of the leaders that are working for the people that were hurt by ABC need to stay united. Can you speak to that?
Well, I would probably need more clarification. Are they going to be united against ABC, united against the hurt, united against the harm, united against what are they uniting against? I just want clarification from the question.
She says here, all of the leaders that are working for the people that were hurt by ABC need to stay united.
Well, I would say to that, Teton, we have to identify the enemy. ABC, G. Craig, the members of ABC, the followers of G. Craig are not the enemy. They are not the enemy. What they have did is transgress and hurt and harm people. But we know that the enemy sits a little higher than G. Craig Lewis. And what happened, if you're going to unite against someone, we have to unite against that common enemy. Because when we're trying to unite against a direct ritual in words and attack, you know, a person or a group of people, that's always going to lead to unproductive and rotten fruit. It has no. That's the place that it always ends up. It's so.
I got a statement from Mr. Charles Payton. He says, leadership is expressed when leaders can navigate through difficulty and trauma. So our responses as leaders is to address truth and deal with those consequences.
Give me some clarity on that.
Leadership is expressed when leaders can navigate through difficulty and trauma. So our response as leaders is to address truth and deal with those consequences.
Oh, that's a statement he's making there.
Yes.
I believe he have a right to that statement. I could somewhat agree with that statement. I definitely agree with the fact that we have to deal with the truth. That's the transparency of what we need. That's the kind of transparency we need. We need to recognize truth, deal with truth, have truth be our guide, our basis for agreement or disagreement, and then move from that point.
You have one gentleman make a statement. He says, leaders need to be more biblical. Can you talk a little about that? Why leaders should be more biblical?
Absolutely. The word is our authority. The word is our authority. I mean, it doesn't matter how you shake it. You got to stand on the word. You got to stand on the word and its principles. I just had a uh, um about 6 or 7 Hebrew Israelites join my Zoom study, and they was hot into the Old Testament scriptures and the laws, and they was fired. And their leader, he ended up saying at the end, after about 2 hours of trying to break through to me in my own study, said that this is fruitless because he's not going to leave the word. And I simply said, if I leave the word, where do I go? You have to stay rooted and grounded in the word. The word is truth. That's what we have to judge and measure everything against. So when you're asking me that leaders that are not biblical are not leaders for Christ. At that point, they fail to be leaders of Christ because there's no guide in order for them to lead by. So what happens? I think we confuse our ideas of leaders, and we make our leaders based on how we feel about them, not judging their leadership by the fruits that they're bearing. You see the fruit, judge the fruit. If the fruit is good, then it's good. But we judge that by the word. So once, if you ask them that, you said that they need to be biblical, all leaders are biblical. All leaders of God are biblical. That's a fact.
Mm. So let me ask you this, Brother Lee. You had an
Yes, sir.
opportunity to hear a leaked audio recording of a leader being frustrated, expressing his frustrations. What did you hear that others may not have heard when you listened to that audio recording?
I can tell you, they probably heard the same thing. They probably defined it as something else. It was totally rooted in fear. Fear torment. And what I heard in the audio was just simply fear. And what happens when you hear that level of fear, you have to proceed with caution. You have to be careful because, like I said, fear torment. Fear is one of the greatest motivators of people behavior. And so when you hear someone expressing that type of fear and that type of rhetoric, and as a man and another man expressing that type of fear, my heart still, no matter what he had done, went out to that man because I understand the end of that could actually be death. And what happens with it, I don't think we take that serious enough. What I heard was fear. And fear is a motivator, it torments. And what happens if you proceed, I don't know what satisfaction you may be looking for at that point, but what I heard was the kind of fear that causes a lot of harm, lot of other problems that could be avoided.
So, in other words, as Brother Davis mentioned earlier, and in his video, he talked about being able to reconcile, but most importantly, being led by the Spirit of God in all that we do. It's important to be led not by our own doings in terms of some of the things that has happened, and sometimes we can get in the way, whether it's fear, whether it's other ideas or perspectives, because I understand, people do things differently. We have different ways of viewing things. But I believe when it comes down to the end of what has happened, we have to be more in clear and certain that we don't find ourselves in the very circumstances and situations. And that has kind of helped me along the way, because it could very well happen to anybody, and
Yes, sir.
sometimes we understand that things do happen and we have to go through that
Yes,
process.
sir.
But we have to consider ourselves, man. And I used to hear you talk about all the time, brother. You got to consider yourself. Consider
Yes,
yourself,
sir.
because
Yes, sir.
pride ain't looking for your ethnicity.
That's right. That's right.
So we
That's
have
right.
Brother Ryan here. Brother Ryan says, when you say fear, could you mean death or speaking in the sense of suicide?
No, I heard a brother fear of whatever it is he's fearing, failure, the disruption of lifestyle, his peace, interrupting things, his fear of failing to protect, fear of exposure even the more. So you're talking about, I'm not necessarily talking about suicide. I'm not necessarily talking about the behavior that comes with that fear. I'm talking about what I heard was a man that was fearful, and actually a person that, as you know, as being a man, whether you a good man, bad man, grimy man, you still a man, and you're going to go through emotions that men have, and a lot of times, if that man is not, controlled, if he's not in control of his faculties, then anything can happen, and at that point, it doesn't become a joke; it becomes a scandal, and it becomes something that is published throughout tabloids and put on the news and things like that.
Well, Burley, I appreciate uh, your your feedback, your wisdom. I want to know, is there anything else you would like to add? Any existing thoughts? Even to those that are in the chat, if you have any additional questions that you would like to ask, feel more free to ask those questions. But Lee, if you can just sum this all up, and really give a call to action, most importantly.
Well, I would say, Tito, I appreciate your work, man. I appreciate what you're doing for the people, for the kingdom, and I appreciate your perseverance, man. And, if anybody know, I know that this has been difficult for you, man. I know that you've been challenged with this. I mean, it's something that you dedicated your life work to. You built relationships. There's things out there that you have sacrificed that can't even be replaced. I know that you're committed you know, to affect and change. And all I would say is that I wish, above all things, that those that's in the chat would join you in invoking change and to making that happen. And one of the things I would ask is that if they could find it in themselves to forgive, find it in themselves to if not forgive, take it to the Lord to see if this unforgiveness is healthy for themselves. Is it something that they should carry on? I just want them to at least try it. The scripture said, try the spirit by the spirit and see is it of the Lord. I want them to at least try it and to approach it in a way that say, is this healthy for me at this point? Or am I manufacturing an excuse for, not being optimum, not being who God has called me to be, and totally giving myself to the work of whatever ministry they're called to do, and using this as a convenient, way of avoidance, because avoidance is a powerful behavior, and so what happens is, I just want them to really examine themselves and seek, do a little soul searching. And really at the end of and I pray that they would join, in the ministry of reconciliation. That's what we're a part of. We're a part of the ministry of reconciliation. I mean, that's what we've been called to do. I mean, if Christ himself can hang, if he could take lashes, if he can take hanging on a dead tree and dying, and he can still have it in his heart to say, forgive them, for they know not what they do, I don't think that Craig Lewis or anyone else should have that much authority in your life where you can't say the same thing that Christ said, because we're trying to and we're striving to be like him.
Well, man, I appreciate you, man. This was
Yeah, bro.
insight. Good insight. Good feedback. You're more than welcome to come back because there's a lot that we can talk about. But
Yes,
again,
sir.
the healing continues. It don't stop. It don't quit.
Yes,
Take
sir.
that.
Hey, brother, listen, man. Anything you need, anything to support you need, just let me know, man. You know I'm in your corner. And like I said, I thank God for you, brother, and the work that you do, bro. And I just want you to continue in this on this path, man. So, it's a beautiful thing, brother. It's a beautiful thing.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you very much, man. And thank you all for tuning in.
Okay.
And God bless. Good night.